Now we're good.
All right, good morning. Daf Yomi for the week is sponsored by new sponsor, Trevor and Melanie Reef, in honor of the Rav and the Kahal Yereim. Kahila, thank you very much. Appreciate all our new sponsors. Everybody is welcome.
Sponsors, new members.
New members. Oh,
yes.
Beautiful. Welcome to the Kahila.
Yeah.
So we are 8 lines up from the bottom of Tes Vav Amud Beis. Amar Rav Dimi Bar Abba. Rav Dimi Bar Abba says, Kederch Asolim Kor La'uvi Kochavim. When we were talking about selling different types of animals to non-Jews. So we said that if you sell a behema daka, that is the smaller type of animal, that depends on the location in which you live, because we were worried that some non-Jews were immoral with their animals, and so therefore it depends. If you live in a place where that is a challenge, that's a problem, don't sell your animals to those people. But if it's because lifnei iver, right, the prohibition of lifnei iver, because you can't let them do their averos. However, when it comes to large animals, that was prohibited regardless, because we said large animals, we had a prohibition, a rabbinic prohibition, that maybe you'll accidentally rent to them, or you'll mistakenly, if you sell to them, you'll rent them or lend them, or maybe even let them take a test drive on Friday late afternoon, and then as a result, they'll use the animal on Shabbos. Now, we had discussed at the end of the daf that we did on Wednesday that if you know that the person who's buying the animal is going to use it for a permissible purpose, like he's going to slaughter it and eat it right away, that isn't a problem, right? It's because you're worried about farm work that it is a problem. Okay, so now, Rav Dimi Bar Abba says that just like it's usher to sell to non-Jews, also in kor lelistim Yisrael. So you're also not allowed to sell to thieves who are Jewish. So heichi dami. So what is the circumstance that we're talking about? Ida chashid de katil. If this part we're talking about selling, we also had a prohibition against selling weapons. And they were not allowed to sell weapons or armor or shields or any of those kinds of things to non-Jews as well. So we said just also you can't sell to Jews who are thieves as well. So heichi dami, what's the circumstance? If you're worried that they're going to literally kill people, so pshita, so then that's obvious. Why would you be able to sell weapons to a murderer? That you can't do. That's the lifnei iver. So hainu ovei kochavim, the exact same thing as selling to a non-Jew, right? The reason why you can't sell to a non-Jew is because you're worried that he might kill somebody. Ve'ida lo katil, if he's not going to kill anybody on my low, why not? So Leo, why? Because okay, so you can have a gun for self-defense. There's no reason why you can't sell. That's I understand. So but in the rest of the world, not the rest of the world, but when the world was real. Anyway, Leolam. So really, de lo katil. Right? The answer is he's not going to kill anybody. What's going on here? What this guy is, he's a guy who sneaks. He's a sneaky thief. And what he does is he keeps a weapon with him.
He's like a snake.
Like that, right? He's a cat burglar, right? And so therefore what happens is he might get himself into trouble, and that's why he needs the weapon, right? He's using the weapon to protect himself in the circumstance he gets himself into trouble. So that's the chiddush. He's not going to go and kill anybody, nevertheless. He's going to use it for self-defense. Nevertheless, he gets himself into bad situations of self-defense. Don't sell to that person. Tana Rabban Rabban. You're not allowed to sell to them treason.
Shields.
That's right, shields. You can't sell shields. My time, what's the reason why not shields? So maybe because they are protection, right? You can't sell weapons of protection, I guess, self-defense weapons. So if your concern is that they're going to be able to protect themselves from weapons, and we want the non-Jews who are soldiers not to be able to survive, so then don't sell them food either, right? In other words, at any time you're providing them with any kind of sustenance that's going to allow them to exist, right? Don't sell them food.
Where would they get their food from?
That's the point, right? Hopefully they won't get food, right? We're trying to get rid of these soldiers. We don't want them hanging around killing people, so therefore don't sell them anything. Decide to sell them non-Jews. If you want a moment, I'm just going to grab a tissue. Okay. So, Amar Rav says on Tezayin Amud Aleph, E Efshar, right? That you can't get away with. Because there, the non-Jews will say, hey, that is, Rashi says, below Ava, right? People are going to decide that that's being rude, right? And then the non-Jews go, what are you talking about? You can't sell us food? To say we don't have shields, we're not selling shields, okay, fine. But you can't get away with not selling food, right? That seems off. Hachinami, that's the same sort of circumstance going to be here. You have to worry about your relationship, right? You can't just decide you can't sell things. There are others who explain that Trisin Hainu time of the reason why not shields is delo shlim zainaihu katli begavaihu. That what happens is if their weapons break in the battle, then they'll use their shields as weapons too, right? They'll hit each other with shields. V'yesh omrim, and so therefore they're really weapons. V'yesh omrim, those who say mochrim lehem trisin, right? That some say that you can sell shields. Why? Because when their weapons break, me'arik arki, they run away. They don't stick around holding a shield in battle. That's ridiculous. Amar Rav Nachman says, Amar Rabba bar Avua, in the name of Rav Avua, halacha ki yesh omrim, halachas like the yesh omrim, they don't stick around when they just have their shields. Amar Rav Ada bar Ava, Rav Ada bar Ava says, ein mochrin lehem ashoshios shel barzel, that you can't sell them,
something from iron.
Right, it's
thick pieces.
Right, thick pieces of iron. Right, you can't sell them sheets of iron. Right, my time. What's the reason? Mishum dechal shiminaihu klei zayin, because they use that metal to make weapons. So you're selling them material to make the weapons. So ihachi, if that's true, afilu mari vechitzni nami. So he says, well, if that's also the case, so then you're not going to be able to sell them. Rashi says it's pushir. And chatzili, I'm not sure what's that.
Hose.
Hose?
Yeah, hose. And adzis.
Hose and adzis. Adzis is a tool that they use to shave wood down with, right? So you're not allowed to sell. You're not going to be able to sell these other tools as well, because these are also tools that you could use to make weapons with as well. So Amar Rav Zvid. So Rav Zvid explains beparzla Hindu a'a. This is Indian. Right, from the word Hindu, right? This is the Indian type of iron, because that is a strong type and that is used almost exclusively for weapons, right? If you're going to sell them wood-making tools, or you sell them a hammer in order to smash iron, they could be making horseshoes, right? You don't know what they're going to be making, so that's okay. But if you're going to use an iron that is exclusively weapons grade, right, then you don't sell weapons-grade iron to the non-Jews. Nowadays that we do, Amravasi leparsoi demagnu ilavon. Now it's different because the Persians actually have a police force that protect us. So therefore, it's not the same thing. So if you own a gun shop, right, and the police decide that they want to buy ammo from you, that's not a problem because the Canadian police, by and large, are protecting Jews.
Right. The Persian police today. Times have changed.
It depends which Persian police, right? It depends which side of the Persian police. Okay, next thing that was listed in the Mishnah is we're not going to sell young calves, agolim, and sayachim, and foals. Tanya, we learned a Bryce, Rabbi Yehuda Matir, Bishvura. Rabbi Yehuda came along and he said, and why? Because even though these animals at their current state are not usable for work, we're going to include them in the prohibition because they will grow to become full-blown animals. And so therefore, we're just going to prohibit the entire type of animal. Rabbi Yehuda says that the shvura, if the animal is broken, right? We had talked about the circumstances where they cut the animal gets injured in some kind of way. We had the examples of
born with some sort of defect.
Right, some had some sort of defect. Why? Because because it's broken enough that it's not going to heal and live for very long. So therefore, that's why would you buy an animal that's not long to live? Food, right? So therefore, since this is not really a work, if you're selling an animal that's not well, it can't pull a wagon, you're probably going to shecht it, you're probably going to eat it, and that's why you'd be buying it, and that isn't a problem. Amrulo, so they said to him, Valo mirav in ole violedis. Well, they do keep these animals around, even not for shchita. They use them for breeding. Right, you could breed these animals and make more cows and oxen and things.
That's going to be a problem
and then that will be a problem because we don't want the non-Jews holding on to these animals that a Jew sold, because then the takana will be that, if I can sell this type of animal, I can sell this type of animal. So the Rabban said no. People are going to keep them around. They're going to hold on to them. Amar lehen, he said back to them, lekesheteled. Right? So who says they can have babies? Right? This is an animal that's so injured that can't, because alma lo mekabel zachar. We're talking about an animal that is so ill that it cannot get pregnant. Right? It's not going to be able to. So therefore, that's the circumstance he's talking about, and that's when you could shecht it. Ben Beseira matir besus. Then Ben Beseira says horses are a different animal, right? It's a horse of a different color, right?
They're not kosher, so
Of course. So the horse is, that's too many puns on this. The horse is not, because it's not a farm animal. Nobody buys their horse in order to be able to pull a plow. Nowadays they sort of did, but they used their horses for riding. That was the main purpose of horses.
But were we allowed to use horses for work?
So this is the question. They're allowed to do whatever they want with it. The issue is whether the Jew is allowed to sell it to the non-Jew, with the presumption that he's not going to, because riding an animal on Shabbos is asur midrabanan abes, rabbinically prohibited, right? So because the prohibition is that maybe somebody will break off a branch and use it as a whip in order to be able to get, because carrying the horse, doing malacha, carrying a human being is not in Isser D'Oraisa, and us is not Isser carrying, because we presume this person can carry themselves. If another person carries another person, that is not carrying on Shabbos. Only D'Rabban, not D'Oraisa. So therefore, a horse carrying a person,
you're allowed to carry a person.
Exactly, right. So therefore, a horse carrying a person is not an Isser D'Oraisa. So therefore, if you're selling the horse in order to carry a rider, there's no prohibition that the horse is going to be doing on Shabbos that you have to worry about. So therefore, that's the issue here. So Ben Beseira says, horses are different. So Tanya Ben Beseira matir besus mipnei shu osabel malacha she'ein chayavin aleh chatas. The horse does work that you're not going to be in violation of a Torah prohibition, which would lead to a korban offering if you did it b'shogeg. Ve'Rebbe oser. Rebbe says no way. Still osir. Why? Mipnei beis dvarim, for two reasons. Echad mishum toras kli zayin. First of all, because they're war animals, right? People use their horses as cavalry, and that's not allowed. We don't want to do that. The second is because we just made a general rule: no large animals to non-Jews. Period. Finished. Therefore, we're not going to distinguish between the horses and the oxen. So I understand, because they train their horses to run people down, right, with their hoofs. So they're war animals. What do you mean to say that there's no difference between them? Was the whole point, right? There's no difference between a horse and other large animals. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, the answer is, you know what they do with old horses? Don't say glue. What they do with old horses is they use it to turn the millstone, right? So therefore, if they can use it to turn the millstone, that is tochen, grinding is a deoraisa malacha on Shabbos. So therefore, since they're usable for a deoraisa malacha on Shabbos, he says that you do have to worry that they're in the same category as, even though you're selling it when it's young, and that's not the primary purpose you're selling it for.
You're selling it to a non-Jew.
You're selling it to a non-Jew, right? But remember, the prohibition is because we might come to lend it to a non-Jew, right? And then non-Jew can't use your animal to do malacha on Shabbos. Right, so therefore, we're not going to allow you to sell it, which is perfectly permitted, right? As we said, if the non-Jew owns it, it's not a problem for you anymore. Nevertheless, we're going to make the prohibition. We're prohibiting people, because people get used to the idea of selling it, then they're going to lend it, and then they're going to also rent it, and they're also going to do the test drives on Erev Shabbos and prove it. But even though horses, normally, there's no test drive because you don't sell the horse when it's old, ready for pulling the millstone.
You sell when it's a pony or whatever it is.
Right, so, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, halacha ke ben beseira. The halacha is like ben beseira, that it's permissible to sell the horses. Iboy Lu asked the following question: Shor shel pitem mahu. So he says, let's say you have a fattened ox. Fattened oxen were fattened up so that you could eat them, right? That's the reason why you want a fat ox. So now it's not really usable for farm work in its current state. So the question is, Tiboy Rabbi Yehuda, Tiboy Rabbanan. The question is according to the Rabbi Yehuda, who said that a broken down animal was permissible to sell, and the Rabbanan, who said that it's not permissible to sell. Because Tiboy Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Ad kan lo kashari, Rabbi Yehuda el bishvura. Rabbi Yehuda said, you know which kind of animals that you're allowed to sell? Broken down animals that cannot do any farm work. Delo osi liklal malacha. They're not going to do anything of al-hai, but these fattened oxen, you put them on a diet, right? And also, they go right back to being very useful, right? So somebody might come, and I understand that it's great for eating right now, but if this farmer is looking for a work animal, he'll buy it and he'll put it on a diet, and then he's got a great animal, right?
Low carb diet.
Low carb diet for the. I think animals always eat a little.
Yeah.
Don't they always? They're herbivores. Anyway, it's just a matter of how much you shove in its mouth. So then it will be aser, dilma, or maybe, afil rabbanan, even according to the rabbanan, loka asri, Hassam, the rabbi said, no, you can't sell even the broken animals, right? So you say, for sure you can't sell this one. No, maybe over there, it's because eladistame lav l'shchita kai. Because when you sell an ox, there's no reason to presume that the reason a person's buying it is for slaughtering it. Most people buy a healthy ox for farm use, and so therefore that's why you can't sell a healthy ox, because you have to presume it's being used for farm use. Aval hai, but in this circumstance, it's a big fattened ox. It's designed for meat. It's designed for beef, right? We raise Angus cattle. We don't use them for farm work. They're designed and bred for meat. So therefore, if you sell these meat, maybe you could sell these meat animals because it's clear what they're being used for. So then afilu rabbanon sharu, even the rabbis would permit it. So therefore, it's not clear. Even according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not clear according to the Rabbanan. Even the Rabbanan who normally say prohibited might permit this. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, who normally say prohibited, permitted, might prohibit this. Did I get backwards? Sorry. Rabbi Yehuda is the one who normally prohibits. He's going to permit this. No, sorry. Normally permits the broken down animal. He's going to prohibit this. That's what I meant to say. Tashma, come and listen. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Shmuel. Shall base Rebbe Hayu Makriven Shor Shal Petim Biyom Edom. There's a story that Rebbe's household, right? So Rebbe was the Nasi, and we know that he was close to the Roman authorities. So his household had a custom that in order to stay close to the household of the Roman authorities, they would bring an ox, a fattened ox, on the day of their holidays, their non-Jewish holidays. Now, we know that you're not allowed to do business with them on non-Jewish holidays. And it was clear that the reason that he was offering it was in order just to be able to provide for a feast. It wasn't a feast that was going to, that's the Mefarshim have to make it very clear.
For his home or for
not
the non-Jewish home?
For the non-Jews, but nevertheless not in a circumstance that they would praise their idols. In other words, otherwise we'd come into all of those other prohibitions that we had discussed before. So, right, so, and Rashi explains the reason why, so he didn't like this anyway, because it was an embarrassment, right? The idea that the Jewish leader is sending a non-Jewish leader a big present, right? Tribute, right? He didn't like it, so he wanted to get rid of this custom, okay? So, Chaser Dalad Rivavon, Shein Makrivin also Yom. So the first thing he did was, he paid 40,000 presuming zuz, right? Because that's the currency, right? He paid 40,000 zuz that they wouldn't shecht it on that day, right? Tomorrow, we'll do it tomorrow. El lamachar, let's do it tomorrow. Then the next year, chaser dalad rivin, he paid 40,000 more shein makrivin also chai, that we won't have to bring it while it's alive. We'll shecht it for you. We'll just send you the meat, right? How about that? Okay, el shachut. So then the next year, chaser dalad rivavon shein makrivin also kol ikr. Then the next year he said, you know what? I'll pay you another 40,000 if I don't send it at all. So, right? So that's how he ended the practice. So my taima, what is the reason why he decided that he was going to send it when it was already shechted rather than when it was alive? Lav mishum dilma osi l'shehuye. Maybe, isn't it because of this practice? It was a fattened ox. Nevertheless, we would be concerned that they might accept the ox. They'll trim it down and then they'll use it, and it's giving it to non-Jews, and that's a violation of the prohibition. Well, ulatamech she'ein makrivin oso hayom el lamachar my taima. Well, if you're going to just pick one part of the story, then how are you explaining why he paid money in order for them not to get it today and get it tomorrow? What does that have to do with anything? That's not going to help the Gezerah at all. Ella, rather, what happened was Rebbe Miakar Milsabai. Rebbe was trying to get rid of this thing altogether. He didn't want to keep delivering this animal, the savar, and he thought Yaakir Vasi Purta Purta. The strategy is, if I just come today and I say, you know what, I'm not going to give you the animal anymore, they're going to be, what? That's so rude. Rather, what he did was, you know what, I'll pay you off to let me do it tomorrow. I'll pay you off to deliver steak. I'll pay you off to forget about it. And then slowly, they said, you know what, it's okay, right? And that's how we got rid of it. Bori va'avin malacha. So that's this. So therefore, it has nothing to. The fact that he wouldn't send them a fattened animal and decided to send them shechted meat has nothing to do with this issue. That the fattened that it would be.
It's a better situation.
It was just because a completely different issue. Correct, different situation. It wasn't because we wanted to prove from here that you can't send a fattened animal because they'll thin it up and make it into working. Now, the question that we're going to say is, now the next part of this is, who's to presume that you can take a fattened ox and get it back into shape? I mean, that's the presumption of the question, is that it works, right? It's perhaps there's irreparable damage once you get the ox into fattened up shape. It's too late. Can you wait around, get it healthy again, and then use it for work? Amar Rav Ashi says, Amar li Zeveda bar Tura Mashhinan le ve'ovid ad chad train. He says, yes, that Zveda bar Tura, Zveda said that an ox, right, that is fattened up. So what you could do is you could just hang around, and then if you do that, it actually can do double the work that a regular ox can do, right? There be strengthened oxen and
Be overweight and strengthened.
well, it was overweight, and then you diet it up, and apparently it gets very strong, right? Because it's fattened up, and then it exercises, turns the fat into muscle, and there you go. That's the way, right? It was bulking. What is it? They bulk, and then how that works. Anyway, obviously I haven't done that. Right? Okay.
I wonder if it was both. If it was injured and if that was
Once the injury is in place, then we consider it an injured animal.
right.
Right? Says the next Mishnah. So now, by the way, we don't resolve this, right? So we leave it this way. Normally, we say that because it's a rabbinic enactment, we would go leniently. The halacha in practice, just so that you know, in case you're selling cows to non-Jews, that we actually go stringently in this circumstance on this gezerah, right? Even though the Gemara ends it inconclusively, the commentators end up saying that no, we're gonna go stringently, which is unusual. Says the next Mishnah, Ein mokrin lehem duvin va'arayos. You can't sell bears and lions to non-Jews. V'chol davar sheish bo nezek l'rabim. Anything that can be a public danger. Ein boneni mahem basiliki girdol mitstadia ubima. We're going to just find these buildings. You can't sell a basilica. You can't help them build a basilica, a gardom, and stadia is a stadium, and a bima is a platform. All of these were platforms that were used for executions. Right, they were very into their executions. So they would have these high court. They had these stages for courts and whatever, and then they would execute the people, to push the people off the high places, and that was the demonstration. Right, so that's why we're going to say at this point, that's why you can't build them with them, because they are dangerous. Right, you're helping them to kill people. You can sell to them bimusios. Right, bimusayos is a non-Jewish kind of like a gathering place, and I guess it must not have been as necessarily for a religious purpose, but also there are some who changed the girsa to dimusyos. Dimusyos are bathhouses, natural hot spring bathhouses, and beis merchotzos were regular bathhouses. And what they would do with bathhouses is they would be constructed in if you go to like garages to see that, they had like a floor where they would have all the heat, and they would pump all the water in, and they get the water nice and hot and a lot of steam, and then they'd have a wood floor that they would build on top of it, and then you go in there and it would all be all steamy and like a sauna kind of a situation, right? So that's what they would do. So you can help build those things. Those are for the public good. And even though there are non-Jews that are there, and we're going to see the Gemara is going to talk about why there would be even any thought that there would be a problem with it, you're allowed to build those. Higia lekipa.
Could there be a problem from our side?
Well, the bathhouse, no problem, right? You can build an office building, build a bathhouse, not a problem. Higia lekipa, when you get to the dome part, there, they would put a statue for Avodah Kochavim, specifically a statue to Aphrodite. They like to put their statues to beauty in their bathhouse places. So when you get to that section, Osir Livnos, don't build that part, right? The bathhouse workings and things, fine. Once they get to the Avodah Zara part, their shrine that they want to put, bow out of the construction at that point. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chanin bar Rav Chisda, Rav Chanan bar Chisda, Amar Rav Chanan bar Rava. Some says Rav Chanan bar Rava, Amar Rav in the name of Rav. Chaya Gasa, when it comes to the large animals, Hare Hi Kebehema Daka Lepirchus. Now, Chaya Gasa is not a Behema Gasa. Behema Gasa is a large domesticated animals, oxen, cows, those are the ones we've been talking about. Chaya Gasa are wild, large animals. Elephants is a good one, right? I was thinking bison, buffalo, right? The ones that are out there in the wild, right? An elephant, I suppose, could, right? Bears are going to be dangerous. We're going to talk about that's going to be a different category necessarily, right? We're trying to pick ones that are not necessarily as dangerous at the moment. So we say that they're saying that the prohibition to sell to non-Jews is the same prohibition as the behemoth, right? The small animal. Now, the small animal is only it's the same law as far as pirchus. Pirchus is when you do shchita on an animal that's not so well. As we said, sometimes they would try to you have an animal that's sick. You're like, okay, let's do shchita on it so that we can at least get benefit out of the meat before it dies. So sometimes you have an animal that's very close to death and you do shchita on it. How do you know whether the animal died before the shchita or whether you did the shchita? So the answer is there's a flexing motion that they make with the front legs that verifies that the animal is still alive. So after you shecht it, it moves, right?
Just like a chicken when you cut it.
Yeah. There's involuntary movements and things, and so if when it comes to a large domesticated animal, all they have to do is extend their front legs. Right? If they have their legs and they extend their front legs, that indicates that they were alive at the time of shchita. However, when it comes to small animals, and also the same halacha when it comes to a large non-domesticated animal, and that's a bison or buffalo, those are kosher animals, so that's probably what we're dealing with. They have to extend and retract their leg. Right? It has to be both. Right. Well, I guess we'll get to chulin and see if we sort of understand why that is. But that is I suppose that the larger domesticated animals, they're not as limber or used to running around or whatever it is. So I don't know, like that. Just an extension is a big movement for them. Whereas the large non-domesticated animals have the same rule as the small animals. Avalo lemechira. But they don't have the same law as the small animals as far as selling them is concerned, right? We said when it comes to selling the small animals, you just have to worry about nobody's going to do any immoral relations with them. And these large non-domesticated animals, shouldn't have to worry about that. So therefore, you would think that you'd be permitted to sell them, but that's not true. Ve'ani omer, and I say, says Rav Chanan bar Rabba, or Rav Chanin Barav, that Ani Omer af lemechira, that you cannot even sell them. It's also not a prohibition. Malkum shenagu limkor, any place where they have the custom to sell it. Shalolim mocher, and then you can sell it. Shalolim korein mocher, and whenever you don't sell it. It's the exact same law as the small animals. Okay, so now what is the issue here? So one would instinctively presume to understand the issue is that in large animals the problem was farm work. So perhaps the question is, can you capture a bison and get it to pull your wagon, right? Can you use a large animal for farm work, right? So Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Ein mocher ledubin varayos. Let's take a look at our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says you can't sell bears and lions. Velo kol davar sheyesh bo nezek l'rabim, or anything else that's going to damage the public. Taima, the reason why you can't sell these are large, non-domesticated animals. The reason why you can't sell them is da'asis be nezek l'rabim, is because they're dangerous. Hales be nezek l'rabim shari, which means that if you're going to sell a buffalo or a bison, which is not dangerous to the public, you'd be allowed to, right? That would be the indication. Or even a tame lion, for example, right? If the lion is tamed, that would also be permissible.
You need drugged, right?
Not drugged, right? If you raise, you have these, right? If you raise a lion cub from when it's very little, right? Then they can live together with people and not eat them, theoretically. I wouldn't. I'm just saying that people, right? People, there's people do that. The circus and whatever. Amar Rabbi Bar Ula. So Rabbi Bar Ula says, Be'ari Shavur. Rabbi Bar Ula explains that which the Mishnah says, that it's only if it's dangerous, is telling us that is a lion that is unhealthy, right? A lion that is in some case some way maimed, and so
you find it sick and you save its life.
So therefore, a maimed lion is permissible, right? So Valiba de Rabbi Yehuda, and this is according to Rabbi Yehuda. Right? Rabbi Yehuda says this is always the case. When you have any maimed animal that can't do any work, so that's why you can sell it, because there's no prohibition of farm animal work. So it's not telling you that you're allowed to sell large animals that are non-domesticated, right? That's not what the Mishnah is trying to say. The Mishnah is trying to say you can sell the large animals if they are damaged in some way, like Rabbi Yehuda said. That's what the Mishnah is saying. So Ravashi says, Stam Ari Shavar who ate some malach. Ravashi says, lions in general, by temperament, are not able to do any work. You're not going to put a lion to work pulling your plow. Even trained, that's not a lion type activity, right? So therefore, that's why lions are different and distinct. There wouldn't be a problem selling a lion except for the fact that it's dangerous. Okay? Whereas other large non-domesticated animals may be problematic because they could do farm work. So, Meisve. So we are going to ask the following questions. We're still trying to prove this issue. Keshem shein mochrin lahem behema gasa, right? Just like you can't sell non-Jews a large domesticated animal, kach ein mochrin lahem chaya gasa, so too you can't sell them a non-domesticated large animal. Va'afilu b'makom shemochrin lahem behema daka, even if you do sell them small animals. Right? Chaya gasa ein mochrin lehem, and you're still not allowed to sell them the large non-domesticated animals. That's what Brisa says. So tiyufta to Rav Chanan bar Rava, tiyufta, that refutes Rav Chanan bar Rava because it clearly says you can't sell them a bison, right? Or a tamed lion or any of those circumstances. Okay, now that was the version, that's version 1. Now we're going to learn the same teachings, but come at it from a different angle. Ravina Rami Masnisin Abraisa. Ravina taught this whole discussion as a contradiction between the Mishnah and the Brisa. Right at the end, the way we read it was we tried to understand the Mishnah. We said the Mishnah means this. We changed the understanding of the Mishnah, and then we brought a Brisa to bring our proof. Ravina starts with here's the Mishnah, here's the Brisa. They seem to be contradictory. Umishani, he teaches like this. Tanan, the Mishnah says, Ein mochrin lehem dubin v'arayos. You're not allowed to sell bears and lions, velo kol davar sheyesh bo nezek l'rab, anything that's going to be a public nuisance, public damage. Taimadias be nezek, because it's going to cause damage. Haleis be nezek mochrin, if it's not going to cause damage, you'd be allowed to sell it, meaning buffalo, bison are all permissible, or a mini. But then we have a contradiction. Kishem she'ein mochrin behema gasa, kach ein mochrin chaya gasa. This Brisa says that you can't sell large non-domesticated animals, buffalo, bison, you can't sell those. Even if you're going to sell the small animals, you still can't sell the large ones, presumably because they can do domesticated work if you train them. Chaya gasa in mochrin, you're still not allowed to sell the large non-domesticated animals. Umishani, and then we explained that this is distinct as be'ari shavor v'ali b'd Rabbi Yehuda. We explained our Mishnah is talking about a lion which is not able to do work, is broken because, according to Rabbi Yehuda, and that's how we are going to explain why that we're talking about the permissibility in the Mishnah to sell the animal. There's a general prohibition. You can't sell animals, but a broken lion you can, and that is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, which is what he always holds, that you can always sell the animals that are broken. Ravashi Amar, Ravashi says, Stam Ari Shavar who ate old malach, doesn't have to be a broken lion. Every lion is always not going to be able to do work, right? So that's the other way of learning this, right? Start with the conflict between the Mishnah and the Brisa, and we come to sort of the same conclusion. Maskifla Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman asks the following question: Man limalon de'ari chaya gasahi. Who says that a lion is a non-domesticated large animal? Dilma chaya dakahi. Maybe a lion is considered a small animal, right? I don't know whether size being the issue or not the issue. But I guess the question he's pointing out is that since it can't do work, right? Maybe it's in this category of smaller animals, and therefore it shouldn't be considered in the farm animal ability to do work malacha, and it shouldn't be prohibited to sell in any event, right? Maybe that's the circumstance. Ravashi Dayik Masnisin Umosiv Tiyufta. So Rav Ashi explained in detail the Mishnah, and he asked the question. Tanan, our Mishnah says, Ein mocher lehem duvim v'arayos. You're not allowed to sell bears and lions, and anything that has a public damage ability. Taima de'is bei nezek, which means the only reason why you can't sell it is because it's a damager. Haleis behu nezek mochrin, which would seem to imply that if it wasn't for the fact that the lion could cause damage, there would be no prohibition to sell it. V'taima ari destam ari shavorhu. And then Ravashi explains that the reason why a regular lion you can't sell is because a lion is unable to accomplish farm work. But another animal, another large type of animal, which would not be able to do malacha, which would be able to do malacha, so then it would be in fact prohibited, right, to be able to sell. And that's Tiyufta de Rav Chanan bar Rava. That's going to be the refutation of Rav Chanan bar Rava that we had taught at the beginning, Tiyufta. That will be, in fact, a refutation of him. Now, V'chaya gasa mihas, my malacha avda. Okay, fine. What exactly can a buffalo do? Or a bison? Ultimately, he's not really great to put your plow on and whatever. What can he do? So Amar Rabbi Amar Limar Yehuda de Beimar Yochani Tachni Rechayim Barudi. He says, you know what we do is that we would use, I think an Arud is a mule, right, or a desert donkey. It's a type of wild donkey, and we would use them to pull to the millstone. So I guess the same thing the horses did, right? So apparently, this pulling the millstone probably doesn't require it to be attached to a yoke, and it's probably just getting it to walk around. And so just being strong enough is sufficient. Okay? Amar Reb Zara, so Reb Zara says, Ki avinan bei Rav Yehuda, when we were by the yeshiva of Rav Yehuda, Amar lan gemiri minai ha milsa de migava rabba shmiali, velo yadana ime rav I mishmuel. So he says, he said, teach us something, right? From I want to teach you something from me that I learned, but from a great person. I don't remember whether I heard it from Rav or Shmuel. So because he was a Rebbe, because Rabbi Yehuda was a Talmud of both Rav and Shmuel. So he couldn't remember which he heard it from Rav or Shmuel, but he said, Chaya gasa, when it comes to a non-domesticated large animal, harehi kebehemadaka lepirchus. He says, as far as the needing to flinch, he says it's the same thing like a small animal. It needs to be able to flex and pull its leg back. Ki osai likarkunya ashkeche l'Rav bar Ashi. When he then was walking on his way from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, he got to a place called Kurkunya, the city of Kurkunya in Bavel, and I saw Rav Chia bar Ashi, v'Yosef v'Kamer mishmei de Shmuel, and he was saying the following teaching in the name of Shmuel: Chaya gasa, when it comes to a large non-domesticated animal, harehi gebehema gasa l'pirchus, that it is like a small animal as far as the flexing of the leg when it comes to shchita. So amino shmamino mishmei de Shmuel itmar. So he says, I clearly can understand where the teaching came from, right? He said, Rabbi Yehuda said, I didn't know whether I heard it from Rav or Shmuel. Then I was walking in Kurkunya, and Rabbi Chia bar Ashi told me the same thing, and he heard it from Shmuel. So Rabbi Yehuda probably heard it from Shmuel also. So therefore, that's probably the derivation of this law. Ki osi l'sura, then he went along in his way, keeps walking, he gets to Surah. Ashkechei Rabba bar Yirmiyah. He sees Rabba bar Yirmiyah there. De Yosef v'Kamer le Mishmei de Rav, and he was saying in the name of Rav, Chaya gasa harehi kebehema daka lepirchos. He said the same teaching in the name of Rav, and he said that it was like a small animal as far as the flexing of the leg. So Amina Shmamina itmer Mishmei de Rav. So he says. Ve'itmar mishmei de Shmuel. So he says, must be, some people said the same teaching in the name of Rav, some people said the name of Shmuel, right? Maybe Rav and Shmuel both said it. And so some people were saying it one way, some people were saying it the other. Ki slikas lahasam. So he gets to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkechlei Ravasi. He sees Ravasi's there. De Yosef Amar, he was teaching as follows. Amar Rav Chama bar Guria, Mishmei de Rav, that Rav Chama bar Guria was saying in the name of Rav, Chaya gasa harei ki behema daka lepirchus, teaching the same teaching, right? That this large animal is like a small animal as far as the flexing of the leg is concerned. And Amri Lev, lo savarle man deman mara dishmasa Rabba bar Yirmiyah, he says, I don't understand. Are you not teaching that this teaching originally came from Rabba bar Yirmiyah? Right, because he had originally heard it from Rabba bar Yirmiyah. So he says, well, you're teaching in the name of Rav. Amar le pasya ukma. He says, you're a blackened vessel. What does it mean, blackened vessel? This was a common term that they would refer to each other as blackened vessel because sometimes somebody would look a little bit disheveled as a Talmud Chacham, and they would point it out. Now, he probably was because he had just spent all this time traveling from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. He probably didn't look his best, so he calls him Pasya Ukma. We can figure out, based on what I heard and based on what you heard, where the source of this teaching is. Itmar Nami Amar Reb Zera, right? So therefore, what he says, basically what I said, that it comes from Rav, and you said it comes from Rabba bar Yirmiyah. Clearly, Rabba bar Yirmiyah had heard it from Rav, right? So therefore, you heard it from Rabba bar Yirmiyah, but it was from essentially it originally came from Rav. Itmar Nami, that some said that it was clearly like that. Amar Reb Zera, Amar Ravasi. Reb Zera said in the name of Ravasi, Amar Rabba bar Yirmiyah, that Reb Yirmiyah bar Yirmiyah said, Amar Rav, in the name of Rav, Chama bar Guria, in the name of Chama bar Guria, Amar Rav, in the name of Rav, which was eventually where the teaching all came back from. Chayagasa harehi kebehema daka lepirchus. That was where we, as far as pirchus is concerned.
Okay.
All right.
Go
9
ahead.
o'clock. I am so sorry for this morning.
He's not a foreigner.